Hello everybody, I am Jared Ross, the Genie Vlogger, and welcome back to another Professional Genealogist Reacts. On today's video, I will be reacting to my Ancestry DNA Results by the October Redhead. Now this is a channel that I'm not familiar with, and most people probably aren't because it's only a 162 subscriber channel, so very small, but this video of theirs got 38,000 views over a year, and when I saw it I was like, that might be a good video to react to. So being a redhead myself, I know that a lot of people have the presumption that if you have red hair, you're probably going to get Scottish or British or Irish ancestry most likely, but a lot of people do realize that there's a lot of red hair throughout many other populations. A few years ago, I did a reaction to a video about black people with red hair, where an African-American family that had red hair throughout their family did DNA testing, and they did find out that there was like Scottish and German, I think. I don't remember exactly, it's been a few years. But I know I saw a lot of comments on that video about all these various populations where they do actually have red hair amongst them, including some African populations. So it's a very interesting thing to see where red hair may pop up, even though the guess is probably going to be Scottish, Irish, some sort of Northwestern European that we'll probably see for her. We could probably see any sort of thing. With all that said, let's just go ahead and jump into the video.
Hello, my name is Nervous. No, my name is not Nervous. My name is Taylor, but I am nervous because my Ancestry DNA results came in, and we're about to look through them right now. So, we're about to look at my results, and I'm really nervous but excited at the same time. I've spent a lot of time on Ancestry. I even pay for like the $30-40 a month membership so I can access all of like the documents and all that good stuff. I'm super interested and curious about my family history, my heritage, where my ancestors come from. I do know that my mom's dad's side of the family is Italian. My great-grandmother, Josephine, there's documentation of her being brought over from Italy to New York.
So if we're talking great-grandmother who's fully Italian, then we'd be expecting 12.5%-ish of Italian/Southern European that we might see, because one thing to know with these DNA tests is even if you're expecting to get something, you may get various populations that are close by genetically just because of shared ancestry, and that may not actually mean that you have that other ancestry. It may just be a misreading. Sometimes it may actually mean you have that ancestry, but that's one of the difficulties of these DNA tests and reading results. But let's continue.
By her parents in like the 20s or 30s? It's 20s or 30s. So I will be absolutely shocked if I don't have Italian in me. When I did my family tree, I'm fairly confident that I traced back my mom's side to like Ireland and Scotland and even England. And then on my dad's side, I don't really know that much. If you look up like my dad's last name, like my last name, it says that the surname comes from like Germany and France. So maybe there's some like Germanic roots or French stuff going on in there. That's really what I'm expecting. So
it's interesting to have both that kind of, on her mom's side, she has a good idea of some of it, some of that Italian, the Irish and the Scottish for the other part. And then it didn't sound like she described all of her mom's side, but at least the majority of it. And then for the dad's side, German, French for the surname. But even if that's the case, that might just be the one line. And depending on how long her family's been around the US, I mean, she's in Alabama, and there's a lot of people where they're in Alabama and they start doing their family trees, they're able to trace it, and possibly tracing her lines back to some of the original settlers in the area she may even live. And if that is the case, especially with her having both parents kind of already coming from slightly different European backgrounds seemingly, then she may get what I like to call kind of like the American hodgepodge of European. So a lot of people that I've ever seen do DNA testing that come from these American colonial families where they can trace, especially multiple lines of their family back really, really far, they get a really big mixture of European, much bigger than others do. And so I wonder if that may be what she does get, is kind of just a huge mixture of all these various Europeans, which, you know, we're already going to be expecting Northwestern European probably, which will probably be a mix. So, you know, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, England, Scandinavia, France, Germany, and then with the Italian, that's, you know, Southern European, also kind of getting into the Mediterranean. So it's like, wouldn't even be surprised, depending on where in Italy the family's from, that maybe there's some North African or Middle Eastern or Arabic readings that she gets, just because of the commonality of population groups from those areas and the populations in certain areas of Italy. Then if she has a lot of other ancestries tracing the various groups, especially, you know, Germanic groups or Eastern European groups or the Balkans or the Baltic states, or maybe even elsewhere throughout the world, we may be able to see a lot of various things popping up in her ancestry results. But I am curious to see comments from anyone who also comes from these American colonial families. Do you find that you have a much larger mixture in your admixtures of various population groups than you see with other people? Because that's certainly what I've seen, but let's continue.
So, without further ado, I guess we open up this email. It's the moment you've waited for. Your Ancestry DNA results are ready. Oh my God. I'm scared. Okay. Can I just do this on the app? What?
Shock face?
My highest percentage. I'm 32% Scottish.
Okay.
Zach? I'm 32% Scottish. Zachary. Babe, does that explain the red hair? Oh,
maybe.
My God. And you know what's funny about that is that, like, Zach and I may elope in Scotland next year, and I'm just, like, drawn to Scotland, and I think it's beautiful, and the history is just, like, breathtaking.
I wonder if she's going to end up showing the actual screen. I hope she does. She's looking on a cell phone, so maybe she doesn't, but cross our fingers. But if she does, hopefully we'll see some communities there, because even though it is such a large percentage of Scottish, knowing the difficulties and some of the craziness that goes on in reading Northwestern European, there may be a question to at least some of that large chunk of it. Not necessarily all of it. I'm sure she does have actual Scottish ancestry, but is it actually that large 33%? Or is, you know, if you actually broke down her Scottish ancestors and her family in the past couple hundred years, it's not quite that. But if she does get the communities along with that, then that can be much more indicative that yes, she does have that Scottish ancestry, and then also to be able to see where in Scotland that's coming from, because those communities, in my experience, have a pretty high confidence to them. I've seen a lot of them where people are like, yes, that's where my family's from. And especially in these videos of people that aren't very familiar with DNA testing, we'll see that and be like, oh my gosh, that's exactly where my family's from. Maybe even if she doesn't show this stuff on screen, maybe she'll see some of those and read them, but I guess we'll just have to see.
It says that I'm only 5% Southern Italy.
Okay, 5%. So if her Italian is truly Southern Italian, that could mean that it wouldn't be surprising to see that North African or the Middle Eastern or Arabic or even Iberian, something like that, because there is a lot of strong correlation between those areas and Southern Italy. And then I can't remember if Ancestry has a separate Sicilian reading or something like that, but if they do, then she might want to keep her eyes out for that as well. So 5%, it certainly is matching up a little bit with her saying she has Italian ancestry. We just need to see the rest of her breakdown to get an idea of, is there anything else in there that maybe could be from that Italian ancestry of hers that she either just didn't know that was also part of that, or is just a misreading of the Italian to be something else, like maybe Greek or some other Mediterranean or just Southern European. That's what it could be if she has a general Southern European reading as well.
What's your next time?
England and Northwestern Europe. And then I'm 21% Irish. I am very Scottish and Irish. Half of me makes up Scottish and Irish.
Typical Northwestern European.
This is insane. So 32% Scotland, 21% England and Northwest Europe, 32% Scotland.
Yes, showing it.
21% England and Northwestern Europe.
Yep.
21% Ireland.
She's got that Cyprus,
5%
Sardinia.
Southern Italy.
So, but there's a lot of other stuff in here that could possibly be representative of Italian ancestry, even though it doesn't say Italian. And that's just one of the things with these admixtures is there's so many possibilities with what could be based on these readings that you have to consider all of them. So if you already know your family tree, sometimes reading these is just a matter of identifying what could this be showing me of my ancestry that I already know. So if she already has her family tree traced out pretty well, she knows her great-grandmother was born in Italy and that, you know, especially has many generations behind her that were in Italy, then yeah, she's probably going to get some Italian readings, but with that 5% Italian, then 3% Cyprus, 2% Sardinia, 1% Aegean Islands, while those are not the same places, obviously, those are just generally, there is a connection somewhat of ancient population groups. And so there's always that possibility that that's all representative of her Italian ancestry. When you add that up, you know, the 5%, 3%, 2%, and 1%, and you're looking at 11%, which is right around the amount that you'd expect for a great-grandparent, which is always about 12.5. So it can be lower, could be higher, and 11% pretty much right there. So I think that could be a possibility. Granted, there's a lot of other possibilities, but that could be what is going on. And whether that means that her Italian ancestry she traces back further and finds connections to Cyprus or connections to Sardinia or even the Aegean Islands or anything like that, that is a possibility, but also a possibility that that's just, you know, it's mostly Southern Italian and that those are just misreadings of the Southern Italian in a sense. Or they could be something from a completely different line of her family as well. So lots of possibilities with this.
Wow. Okay, 5% Germanic Europe, which it has to be from my dad's side. 5% Wales, 4% Sweden and Denmark, 3% Cyprus, 2% Sardinia. I don't know what Sardinia is. 1% Benin and Togo.
Now, 1% Benin and Togo, that is very interesting. Getting a sub-Saharan African reading like that, which it could possibly be a misread at that low of a level of 1%, but it's also looking at things continentally. We have a higher confidence, and there's not that much that correlates to the Benin and Togo beyond kind of those Mediterranean readings. And that's just the idea of going through North Africa. So there's still a lot between what you would typically see connecting directly to sub-Saharan Africa. So that 1%, if it is true of an actual African ancestor, then we're definitely looking pretty far back, at least third or fourth great grandparents, if not further. And if that is the case, then that means that African ancestor most likely was living sometime in either the late 1700s, possibly into the early 1800s. But with 1%, it could also be even further back as a fifth or sixth great grandparent that she just ended up having that segment of DNA going through each generation, not being recombined and thus going out of the DNA. And so if it's a, fifth, sixth, seventh great grandparent, you're looking back at the possibly 1600s even. But coming from an American family, if she's able to build out her entire family tree and identify all of her third great grandparents, all of her fourth great grandparents, all of her fifth great grandparents, at the very least, she may be able to identify what are the most likely branches that's coming from, if not identifying that ancestor directly, but also being in Alabama. She does come from a family that's been in Alabama for many generations. It's very likely she has a lot of ancestors who owned slaves, and thus there's a lot of ways that could have gotten in there. So very interesting. Let's continue.
And then 1% Aegean Islands. What is the Aegean Islands? Between Turkey and mainland Greece are Aegean Islands region, which includes the Sporades.
And then Cyprus is just down there, and Italy's just over there.
Cyclades. Aegean reminds me of
I don't know if that's translating
Game
right
of
for
Thrones,
the camera.
And House of Dragons, like Aegon Targaryen or whatever. That's like Greek.
Now I can see why she's not saying Aegean. I guess that makes sense. Aegon Targaryen sort of thing.
Interesting. Benin and Togo, this is 1%. For years, anthropologists and others looked at African ethnic groups as being mostly solitary and static. West Africa? Whoa. Okay. Sardinia, what is that? Oh!
Yep, right off the coast.
This is so cool. I'm like geeking out right now. This is the best thing ever. I'm like shocked that I'm only... Is Sardinia like Italian? Because I have 5% Southern Italy.
You can basically look at it as Italian, but like I've said many times over and over and over, there's so many possibilities with what these readings could actually be representing. It's really just a guessing game, and the best way that you can do it is look at your family tree and then see what does it correlate best with your family tree to make sense. Because the true power of these DNA tests comes in the DNA matches. So like if you wanted to see, do I truly have Sardinian ancestry? At 3%, I think it was for Sardinian. I could be wrong, but if it was 3%, then we're looking at, you know, third great grandparent, fourth great grandparent, because, you know, great grandparents, you get 12.5%. Second great grandparents, you get 6.25%. Third great grandparents, you get the 3 point whatever percent, and then it keeps having. So third great grandparents is the most likely about that generation. Could be a little bit closer as a second great grandparent, could be more distant as a fourth great grandparent. But if we are seeing that as the distance, if she looked at her DNA matches, more than likely she would see a lot of DNA matches who have known Sardinian ancestry. I don't know if I said Sardinian right there. I had like a stutter. But if she looks at her matches and sees a lot of them with known Sardinian ancestry, that could be indicative that, yeah, it's actually Sardinian ancestry that you have, and whether that's coming through your Italian great-grandmother or somewhere else, maybe. But the other thing to consider is the connection of ancestors between Italy and Sardinia makes it so that even though you're getting this Sardinian reading, it could really be more representative Italian, and you may not have any Sardinian and it's really just Italian. So all the different possibilities, the hypotheses we can get with these.
And if you combine that with that Sardinia, that's 7%. I don't know. This is strange. I can't wait to tell my mom. I can't tell what part of Scotland, though. Like, I wish it told me what part. Germanic Europe. So Austria, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, whatever, and Switzerland.
And the thing, even with these maps, is it could extend beyond that. These maps try to give a best, most likely, this is where it's from if you're getting it, but it doesn't mean it's only from there, because it could be misreads of other places, could be other stuff going on with population flows. And just one thing to mention to what she said a little bit earlier about, you know, wish you could see where in Scotland. There are tests that do a more granular breakdown. Most specifically, Living DNA does a much more granular breakdown for all of England, Ireland, Scotland, I believe, and Wales and all of that. So doing Living DNA may give her the more granular breakdown that she's really looking for. But just understanding how difficult it is to try to decipher DNA from all these different places, just because so many different people from these places really have these shared ancestors, because people are moving around all over for thousands of years back and forth, and especially throughout Northwestern Europe. Why it's kind of like notorious on this channel of people asking about it and having all these weird things like Scandinavian.
Check out which DNA matches belong on each side of your family.
DNA matches, let's see them.
Oh my god. Okay. I'm looking at my matches. And I'm like tearing up.
She sees her
right
family.
Now. My mom's side of the family is Italian, right? And her dad, my papa, never knew his dad. Like, don't know his identity, just know his first name. Don't know exactly his last name, because there was some weird thing where, like, they purposefully misspelled and changed the spelling of the last name, so, like, there weren't any family ties or anything, because it was just a bunch of weird family stuff. And my first match
has the name. That's really cool.
I shared DNA with this person. I shared 4% DNA with them. And this person's last name is my mom's maiden name plus some misspelling in it. My fiance helped me try to track down who my grandfather's dad is, who like we could not track down. You know, my great grandmother Josephine would not tell us anything about him. Like, don't know why. It was just like a weird situation that we could not get anything out of her. And so Zach was helping me try to find his name. We knew his first name, couldn't find him by his last name because they purposely like misspelled and changed things in it. Sharing DNA with this person whose last name makes up some of my mom's maiden name literally confirms that he was right. So like we know who that is now. Holy crap. Wait, and so now it's saying that because of the percentage, when two people share, so 4% of their DNA, these are the ways they could be related, in order of the most common to the least common.
And we have charts that we can use for this outside of these companies that a lot of people find a lot better. Main one is the Shared Centimorgan project by Blaine Bettinger, which is hosted on the DNA Painter website. And basically you just plug in how much DNA you share, and then it will show you all of the possibilities, along with a lot more statistical analysis with it, because there's so many possibilities of how people can be related based on certain amounts. And when you're at 4%, that's actually pretty high up there. 4% is going to be about 300 centimorgans or so, just either right around 300 centimorgans, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, but that's a pretty significant match, and that's going to be a match that's, I want to say that's like a first cousin once removed sort of thing, or I guess we'll hear her read the possibilities, but that's definitely going to be close enough that, especially if her mom is alive, I would suggest her mom do a DNA test.
First common is first cousin once removed. Second is half cousin first removed. Second great grandfather. It says great-grandfather. Oh my God. Is this my great-grandfather that we couldn't find?
I really doubt it's the great-grandfather, because he would still have to be alive for one, which I guess is a possibility. But if he was alive, then that means that either she has really short generations in her family, which is possible, you know, or the great-grandfather is really, really old. I guess, I mean, technically both.
I need to call my mom. Okay, well, this was a little bit crazy. I think, like, my next step for me is just, like, dig into all my relatives and see who I can connect with, because I think that's really cool. Sorry, we had a brief intermission because my memory ran out of my memory card. So I had to go buy a new one, and it is now, like, the evening. In conclusion, I'm shocked that I am so Scottish. I'm shocked that I have so much Irish in me. I am surprised that I'm not more Italian. But I did more research, and just because my grandfather is full-blooded Italian doesn't mean that I'm going to be a quarter Italian, you know? This whole ethnicity and DNA stuff is like, things get passed down from our parents at, you know, kind of random. And I'm 5% Welsh. Like, I need to look into, and Swedish, like 4% Swedish. Some of the stuff on here I'm just like really surprised about.
With a lot of the stuff she's just reading, the Welsh, the Swedish, the stuff that's basically the Northwestern European, I would suggest that she builds out her family tree and looks at her DNA matches and all of that first to get a better idea of what she truly has, because with the Northwestern European, all of these are notorious for falling within anybody who, you know, has already had their family tree traced out on all the lines with DNA matches proving all these various lines, and it'll, you know, all their family lines are pretty much English, and then they'll still get this hodgepodge of other stuff, even though they don't really have any sort of representation like that in their family tree. So that is a possibility of what's going on here. And so looking into the ancestry and seeing, do you actually get a lot of matches who are Welsh? Do you actually get a lot of matches who are Irish or whatever? And even more, can you then build out your family tree and link these people or identify where your ancestors are from? And I'm kind of biased that way too, especially in the idea that when you do the actual family tree, not only are you identifying truly where they're from, but then you're also getting more to the story. You're getting addresses, you're getting occupations, you're getting what they actually did. And if you know how to learn the narrative of an ancestor by going through documents, which is something I try to do on my YouTuber family tree series where I trace YouTubers' family trees, I try to make episodes where it's very narrative and it's almost like you're getting their story and it's not just names and dates and things like that. And so learning things like that, I think, that's where the true power of all this stuff comes in, and not as much like the generalized, oh, Scotland, oh, Wales, oh, whatever. Like, as some people do feel that connection when they go and visit and all that. But I feel like the impact is much more substantive when you're actually going to something more specific in your ancestry than just to generalize this country or this region sort of thing.
So yeah, I think my next steps are to research, these areas and see what I can find about like their culture and their practices, so I can invite, some of their meals and practices into my daily life, because I want to honor my ancestors. I can't believe that I finally know who my great grandfather is on my mom's side. Looking back into my matches, that was not my great grandfather that I matched with. I matched with my half great uncle and my half great aunt, who confirmed who my great grandfather is.
Okay, so that's kind of what I was thinking when I was like trying to think of what her mom would be matching this person. And it was like, honestly, if it's kind of like a first cousin once removed, but it's an unknown father, more than likely you're dealing with a half relationship. But I think this goes to show more than anything how the DNA matches are so much more powerful than just the generalized admixture, because we're not getting a generalized like, oh yeah, you're kind of from here or that. It's a here is your ancestor's name now. And even though she kind of had that before, connecting with these DNA matches is what confirmed it, not only through them matching, but then also from what she's saying now, where she connected with them.
This was really fun. I've been waiting for this for over a month now, and I feel relieved that the results are here. And yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you found this interesting. It was super fun. I'm exhausted. I'm about to go sit on the couch and watch Outlander or play my Switch or something because I'm tired.
Okay, that ended up turning into a really great video because showing the power of those DNA matches. For the rest of it, I think it was a pretty interesting mixture that she had. She didn't harp at all on the Benin and Togo reading, although I do think that would be somewhat interesting to see. Does she actually have a African ancestor, and if she does, can she identify them? But if the parents' DNA test, that's even better, because if it is true, then one of the parents should at least get 1% Benin and Togo, or even better, get a bit higher of a reading, which could be, just a 2% reading, or could even increase to, 6, 7, 8% sort of reading. But either way, having the parents do it could give an idea of how confident are we in that African reading, as well, which side is it through and how distant it is. And that could be something that having her parents' DNA test not only can tell her that, and if it does tell her that, then she'll be able to know where to research to try to find it. Another thing that she could also do is if she finds other known relatives in her family there, so she already has these found relatives through her mom's father's side, but looking at her DNA matches results, if they also have African readings, especially the Benin and Togo, and they're coming from like her, a mostly European ancestry, or pretty much all European ancestry, then that could possibly be indicative of which line it's through if she notices a certain cousin branch that are getting that reading. Everything else kind of fell in line with typically what she expected in terms of having a general Northwestern European ancestry, having that Italian ancestry, which kind of translates to a lot of those Mediterranean islands and areas basically, and then mentioning that possibility of the Germanic ancestry through her father's line, although based on her readings, it's very likely that her father's probably also coming from a largely Northwestern European ancestry as well, basically, England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Scandinavia, sort of thing. But even though she hasn't done really many videos, I think I only saw 4 videos on her channel, and that was like a year ago. Maybe she'll do an update video at some point kind of talking about her family stuff, because this video of hers did have a lot of views. And if you enjoyed this reaction and would like to see more, be sure to click this video of mine right here. Thank you to my Patreon patrons and YouTube members.